This is Rocky Marciano. When I held the heavyweight title, they called me the Brompton Blockbuster. You'll find out why.
Marciano defended his title 6 times, and the biggest question usually asked by his detractors is, why did Rocky not fight the young contenders, the likes of the Bobs, Baker and Satterfield, Tommy Hurricane Jackson, Floyd Patterson? Some even reach out to pull the name Sonny Liston into the conversation, but above all of these is Nino Valdez. So why did Rocky not face any of these? Well, Charles Sonny Liston was only just breaking through when Rocky was retiring. He was briefly mentioned in 1956 as a possible future opponent, but all who discussed this were in agreement that he was at least 2 years away from serious inclusion. As for Patterson, sure, his name was linked with the championship in 1955 and early 56. But Custy Amato, Patterson's manager, had it planned out. His boy would face Rocky in 1957, not before. So that brings us to Baker, Satterfield, Jackson, and of course, Valdez. The problem with all 4 of these is that they came along at the same time, and in so doing they eliminated each other. Valdez eliminated Jackson, who in turn eliminated Baker, who eliminated Valdez. As for Satterfield, well, he kept eliminating himself. Plus, they had the unfortunate timing of running into a phenom, Archie Moore. Moore knocked out Baker in 1954, he decisioned Valdez in 1953 and again in 1955. Yet some say Moore didn't deserve his crack at Marciano. Of all Marciano's defences, ancient Archie was probably the most deserving of all. Yet still there are those who will call on Valdez as the mythical one who would be king, the man who would have dethroned the extraordinary, and he was extraordinary, Rocky Marciano. So why didn't he get his shot?
Before we go on, please subscribe, like, and ring the notification bell to learn more about the remarkable Rocky Marciano.
Valdez turned professional in his native Cuba way back in 1941 at the tender age of just 17. And he would remain embedded in that country until 1947, amassing an underwhelming record of 13 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw and a no contest. Of his first 3 fights in the States from 1948 onwards, he would win only 1, before claiming victory in 7 of his next 8, moving through into 1952. The only blemish being another draw, and he would end his career with 3 of these. During this time he also came under the management of Bobby Gleason, the famed proprietor of Brooklyn's Gleason's Gym. It seemed that the 6'3", 200-pound plus Valdez was finally firmly on his way. That is until November of 1952, when he ran into Harold Johnson, a gifted light heavyweight who outpointed him over 10 rounds. The very next bout for the faltering Valdez would see him against Archie Moore, who outmaneuvered the larger man, again over the 10-round distance. In the hope of rehabilitating his fighter's confidence, Gleason matched his boy against the unknown Billy Gilliam, who beat the Cuban by split decision, and then next up Bob Baker, that other perennial contender, beat Valdez on points. In the middle of 1953, the argument for Valdez was almost over. He had lost 4 in a row, but then he bounced back with a stunning victory over former world heavyweight champion Ezard Charles. Nino would tell journalist Enrique Encinosa of his victory over Charles. I surprised him. I moved very aggressively on him and broke up his rhythm. Ironic then that the general consensus among the boxing fraternity of the day was that he was a good boxer with a solid punch. but he lacked killer instinct. He wasn't aggressive enough. By dint of this victory alone, Valdez would end the year as the #1 contender for Marciano's crown as recorded by the Ring magazine. 1954 was good to Valdez. He would remain unbeaten, a string of 11 in a row, including a conclusive victory of Tommy Hurricane Jackson in July of '54, which ensured he would end the year once again at the top step of the Ring ratings. A sure bet to face the champion in 1955. There is an argument, and a strong one, for Valdez in late '53, early '54. Instead, he was passed over for Roland Lestaza and Ezard Charles. Lestaza was about already in the making when Nino surprised Ezard. In fact, rumours are Nino was offered a fight with Marciano ahead of Charles, the man he had conquered, but the purse was allegedly poor, resulting in the enraged Cuban throwing a chair at Marciano's manager, Al Weil. This run of victories would be the last hurrah for Nino. In 1955, Archie Moore harangued his way into contention for a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world. The final hurdle was a rematch with the then still hot Nino Valdez, passed over in early 1955 for Don Coquel, someone who, it was felt, would not put Rocky's split nose from the Charles rematch through too much of a test. The winner would be given the opportunity to challenge for the championship. Moore won, again outmanoeuvring and outsmarting the far bigger man in the open air of Las Vegas. Bizarrely, this fight, over 15 rounds, was for Nevada's version of the World Heavyweight Championship, but no one, even those in the state itself, took this claim seriously. Nino Valdez was pretty much shot now. Although factions in Cuba would routinely offer Marciano big bucks to face their hero on Cuban soil, or perhaps Miami, where ties were strong during the early part of 1956, but nothing ever materialized. Rocky retired later that year, whilst Nino would begin to lose against younger, hungrier fighters, although he did get a ferocious third-round stoppage of Don Coquel under his belt. He was on the wrong end against Satterfield, Baker again, then the new generation of Machin, Foley and finally Sonny Liston in 1959, although he would still win enough against journeymen and potential contenders to get ranked again in 1958. But the Liston loss marked the end, almost, for the then 34-year-old, who admitted by this time he was over the hill. He won his last fight against Brian London. Then, in 1960, it was revealed he suffered from cataracts. His career was done. Nino Valdez would pass away in 2001, poverty-stricken and all but forgotten, a sad end to a great fighter who failed to capitalise on the opportunities presented and continued to fall at the final hurdle. So this is why he never faced Rocky, except in a sparring session. Perhaps this is the reason he refused the offer given by Al Weil. He knew what he was letting himself in for and wanted to be paid right for it. No journalist at the time of Marciano's reign ever really gave Valdez a chance to dethrone the champion, although most were in agreement that he deserved a shot. But each time he got close, he fell back. It's a fun argument, at least it should be for many now. But you see, the reason Nino never faced Rocky wasn't because Rocky was afraid of him or Marciano's team were afraid of him. No, it was purely down to Nino himself. Rest in peace, Nino Valdez. We here remember you for the great man you were, courageous, kind, a truly talented fighter who carried himself with pride, a man who in another time could have been champion.